The Senate on Wednesday has received a letter from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu forwarding the 2025 appropriation bill of Rivers State for consideration and passage. This follows the suspension of the Rivers State House of Assembly and the declaration of emergency rule in the state, which was formally gazetted in March 2025. According to the President's letter read on the Senate floor, the total budget estimate for Rivers State stands at 1.48 trillion naira. The breakdown of the budget shows 324 billion naira for infrastructure, 166 billion naira for health, with another 5 billion naira for free malaria drugs. The sum of 75.6 billion naira is earmarked for education, while 31.4 billion naira is set aside for agricultural projects. The government says it is looking to create 6,000 jobs. The Senate has referred the budget to its ad hoc committee on Rivers Emergency Rule for further legislative work. The Senate has referred the budget. Now, on the matter, joining us now for more is Haya King, a lawyer based in Port Harcourt, and also News Central correspondent Sagir Ibrahim from Abuja. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for being on your program. It's a pleasure being here once more. Thank you so much, News Central. It's a pleasure being on the station.
Oh, the enthusiasm. What can I say? Love it. Thank you very much, Haya King. First of all, let me start by asking you, the budget is finally out and presented. Now, if the antecedent is anything to go by, this will fly, except if maybe perhaps you don't agree.
Well, like I've just said, this will be maybe a very new and novel, idea. I've never come across that idea before. We are learning every day, and our constitution is not perfect. And I cannot find it anywhere in the Constitution, and I have also looked around the world. The answer is capital no. The President cannot present budget to the National Assembly. The responsibility of budget presentation is actually that of the executive in the state, executive and the legislature. The governor prepares, takes to legislature, or the President prepares, takes to the legislature, that's National Assembly. But this one that the president up there, the pyramid, the president is up there, very, very high. And the National Assembly is like this, the governor is down, and also from here, the president coming from that way, coming down, the governor, picking the budget from the governor, bypassing and going to the National Assembly. I've not seen it before. We are beginning to learn. But one thing I can tell you is that things like this is not going to augur well for judiciary, for democracy, I mean to say. We are still having, I think this is just, we are still looking forward to things unfolding about it. I don't know, they didn't put any law. They didn't put any law that enabled the president to do what he has just done. I didn't see any law they put it. I've seen what they just did this afternoon, but I didn't see any law they put it that enabled the president to do what he did. Although when you suspended the governor of Rivers State on the 18th of March, you quoted the 305 of the National Constitution as modified. For this time I have not seen any law. Maybe as time unfolds, they would look at the law.
Well, Haya King,
they will bring out the law.
Haya King,
the law. I didn't.
Now, Haya King, while we're on the subject of democracy that you mentioned from earlier, now quite a good number of people have been worried that the budget by the sole administrator will lack representation, since it will not be debated by a body of lawmakers elected by the Rivers State people. Do you share the same concern?
I don't think so. I don't share the same concern. You see, the sole administrator, he is a sole administrator. It's not legally considered, legally authorized to present a budget. Where is he going to present that budget? But there was a budget that was presented. There's nothing wrong with him running with that budget for the 6 months. There was a budget. There was a budget that was presented to a legally constituted House of Assembly at the time. There was a budget. But I don't want to go into the issue of the numbers of the people and all that. There was a budget that was passed into law. Are you passing a budget twice in a year? Just like they wanted to reverse the budget which had already been spent. The 2023 budget, 2024 budget which the governor had already spent. There was a time until the governor went to the Supreme Court to withdraw that too. That, tried to buy him from spending on that budget and all that. And they also tried forward. So right now, There was a budget that was presented late last year, late 2024, before the National House of Assembly, University House of Assembly, as it then was. And now you presenting that budget again. The future administrator could have quietly continued spending from that budget. He has already started spending money. There was nothing wrong in continuous spending money from that budget. He has already been running the state because we have this. Our mantra is that the show must go on. The show of government must go on. So for me, this presentation of budget, another one again, is a double killing. You feel it's double killing. There was a budget. Would have made do with that one. What was wrong with that budget?
Just a second.
Was education not provided for there? Was infrastructure not provided
all right,
for
then, Hayaking.
budget?
So, Hayaking, I want to introduce our new central correspondent who's joining us now from Abuja. Sagir Ibrahim is here. Sagir, thank you for joining us. Could you please clarify exactly which budget might be presented this time, Sagir?
Well, for the presentation that was made today, actually the presentation was made both on the floor of the Senate and also on the floor of the House of Representatives for the National Assembly to expedite action and expedite the passage of the Rivers 2025 budget. Now, the reason is because in the situation where there's no state mechanism, talking about the state legislature, to act upon, the appropriation bill, it is expected that the National Assembly takes up the constitutional responsibility of, deliberating, considering, and passing the bill, which is the reason why the president, following the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State and invoking Section 305 of the Constitution, which, by the way, was approved by the National Assembly, sent the letter, in place of the sole administrator. Of course, he's not, an elected member of the government. So the president sent that to the National Assembly. Letters were received by both the Speaker of the House of Representatives and also the President of the Senate, to which they read out today, of course, announcing that the bill is now in their possession. So what they did afterwards is to commit the bill to the two ad hoc committees on rivers oversight for, further legislative action. So what we expect to see next is the bill come on the floor of plenary on both chambers, to be considered for second reading and then, of course, subsequent passage.
And can you give us a timeline for that subsequent reading and also passage?
Well, so far, the letters were read individually at both chambers. No specific dates was given for, for the committees expected to work on the bill to revert back to plenary. But the expectation should be that they do it as quickly as possible because, of course, as you know, the state is still working without a budget, consequence upon which means that Rivers State civil servants might not be receiving their payments and their salaries for this year. It's important for this budget to be passed in spite of the fact that a sole administrator is in place for the sake of workers within the state, to be able to get their living wages and to go on with their life. And of course, for infrastructural development, to begin to hit different areas of the state in spite of the fact that, there is a sole administrator in place, trying to resolve all of the crisis.
All right. Let me come back to Hayaking. Hayaking, lastly for you, how is it the president is the one presenting the budget and not the sole administrator himself? What are the legal ramifications?
Well, that's some of the questions. That is, I don't know whether you're hearing me.
Yes, I can.
That's some of the questions that some of us are asking. But again, that's the question some of us are asking. I, for one, does not believe that the federal administrator also has the power to present the budget. I don't think so. That he has the power to present that budget. What they mean by state of emergency is that there is something happened, emergency, there is abnormality. Abnormal. That's why I insisted that the federal administrator cannot present the budget, neither the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because there was a budget that was presented before now. If the federal administrator is to act for 6 months, he can spend, he can do appropriation and spend from, there is money. The River State has money. There was a budget that was already presented before now. He can spend from there for the 6 months until the legitimate governor comes back and does what the governor should do as a constitutionally guaranteed or constitutionally provided. Not for them to begin to do illegality and illegality upon illegality. In the first place, we said the so-called state of emergency was not right. Secondly, the sole administrator cannot present a budget. That's what we think, because who is he going to present it to? Now, they are even going for a double kill by going to the National Assembly, which I think is not also, the president does not have the constitutional power to do, because there was a budget. A state can run for 6 months, a state can run for 3 months with other sources of revenue. Yes, definitely, it can run. But the salaries are already being paid, things are running, we have been commissioning projects, have been visiting project sites and all that. So for me, I think it's not necessary.
Okay then. Hi King, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Also Sagir Ibrahim, thank you very much. Now we go on our very first break, but when we return, Chief of Army Staff's biannual conference underway in Maiduguri. We'll bring you the details after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, once again, let's remind you that the APC National Summit 2025 themed Renewed Hope Agenda, the journey so far, is currently underway in the State House in Abuja, where the President is expected to speak. These are live visuals from the event currently. Now, the trial of the controversial leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, resumed on a tense note at the Federal High Court on Thursday. Now, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and lead counsel to the federal government, Adegboyega Awomolo, formally objected to a request by Kanu's family for a live media coverage of the proceedings. In a letter submitted to the court, Awomolo urged the judge to ban the use of mobile phones in the courtroom, accusing one of Kanu's lawyers, Aloy Ejimako, of posting misleading and inflammatory content on social media. The presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho, condemned the conduct, describing it as unprofessional and a threat to the integrity of the trial. Meanwhile, the defense team proceeded with the cross-examination of the second prosecution witness, codenamed Triple B. The matter was adjourned to May 29, 28, June 6, 16, 18, 19 for the continuation and conclusion of the cross-examination.
Things went well. We continued the cross-examination of BBB. Today is day 2 of his cross-examination, and we'll be back here tomorrow to continue and hopefully proceed with other witnesses.
Meanwhile, members of a Christian group, the Concerned Christian Youth Forum, has called on all Nigerians, regardless of their faith, to condemn alleged attacks by some notable individuals in the country, like human rights activist Omoyele Sowore and his collaborators, and demand accountability from those responsible. The group, during a protest which held at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, described the onslaught as a persistent campaign of defamation and slander being waged against the Christian faith and its representatives. They're calling on governments to ensure that the right to religious freedom is upheld in the country, regardless of citizens' beliefs.
We have made a number of arrests from different parts of the country, and he has come for some of these people that we have arrested, and most of them, he even takes some on bail. We all know the issue of Olumide Ogunsayo John, aka C King, who were the one who went to arrest him, a 32-year-old boy who was referring to an 83-year-old man of global impact as a very stupid man and a foolish boy. We all saw it. We went to arrest him. He came to take the boy on bail, and to release the boy back for investigation, he has refused to do so. Rather, he's joining issue with a different set of people, and also that is calling for a national protest. And so nobody has monopoly over violence. We have had a lot of, you can even see if you check his page on Facebook and other several handles, you will find out that some of the invitations sent to him from Force Intelligence Departments are there. And I've had physical encounter with him.
If our Christian leaders make mistake, leave it to us. We too, let me also establish here, we are also coming up with a measure to also checkmate our Christian leaders in their way of living. We are coming up with that. What we are doing today is just a foundation of other things that are going to unfold themselves in time to come. Some people have also mingled among the Christian faith who are wolves. Our scripture makes it clear to us, and we are seeing them now. They are being sponsored, and they come into the Christian faith with their evil motive.
A former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has denied holding a secret meeting with President Bola Tinubu in Rome to discuss a Fidelity Bank debt crisis. Obi spoke while reacting to a report that emerged on Monday alleging that Fidelity Bank faced insolvency following a Supreme Court judgment requiring the bank to pay damages of 225 billion naira to the Nigerian firm. In a statement posted on X on Thursday, Obi said the rumor was fabricated by blackmail merchants determined to mislead Nigerians and tarnish his image. He said the claim that he met Tinubu privately at the Vatican is baseless, malicious, and entirely false. And the maiden edition of the Nigeria's Chief of Army Staff biannual conference is holding in Maiduguri as military officers converge to discuss and strategize towards improving security in the nation. News Central's Umaru Kirawa reports that the nation's Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, is emphasizing the need for enhanced interagency collaboration to stem the tide of insecurity across Nigeria. The ECOWAS Parliament has been tasked to review the rise of artificial intelligence, its risk, and the impact of deepfakes on the peace and security of the region. This was during the inaugural session of the Parliament's first extraordinary meeting in Abuja, where members were asked to address the root causes of insecurity, tribalism, and inequality in the sub-region. Now, News Central's correspondent Amadine Uyi has the story.
It is the opening ceremony of the ECOWAS Parliament First Extraordinary Session for the year 2025 holding in Abuja. The session, which had in attendance members of Parliament representing member states of the sub-region, including senior officials from Nigeria's Parliament, led by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio.
In 50 years of existence, the community institutions have played a key role in the economic development, regional integration, peace and security of our region.
This Parliament occupies a strategic position in our integration process. As representatives of the people, your role is important not only in terms of the representation of the views of the community citizens, but also in terms of explaining to them the efforts of the community geared towards the improvement of our well-being.
Together, the ECOWAS Parliament and the ECOWAS Court of Justice represent the twin pillars of governance and legality in our regional architecture. One ensures the democratic expression of the people's will, and the other safeguards the legal and institutional frameworks that uphold justice, peace, and order.
As global geopolitical dynamics shift, Africa must redefine its place on the world stage. ECOWAS must strengthen its voice in international fora, champion the threats and the interests of our people, and demand fair treatment in global trade, in global finance, and climate negotiations.
The President of the ECOWAS Commission, Umar Toure, and Nigeria's President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, both made appeals to the Parliament to deliberate on key issues affecting the community.
As you consider the various items, may I appeal that you include in your deliberations questions relating to artificial intelligence. Indeed, in addition to the great promise that artificial intelligence holds for humanity, there is need to assess the risks that AI has for peace and security in the global south.
But we must also address the root causes of instability, the issue of unemployment in our region, inequality, the issue of tribalism, lack of education for all. For it is often in the shadows of despair that extremism takes root.
The session will run from May the 20th to May the 31st and will entertain community reports from all ECOWAS member states. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Welcome back. Now, in Abidjan, at least 6 people have died after a landslide swept through a neighborhood overnight following heavy rains. The area was left buried in mud, and rescue teams have been working to clear debris and search for survivors. Côte d'Ivoire Minister of National Cohesion, Solidarity and the Fight Against Poverty, Belmonde Dogo, confirmed the deaths and expressed concern over the ongoing danger in vulnerable communities. Each year, the country's rainy season from late May to October claims dozens of lives, particularly in precarious, poorly constructed neighborhoods. Authorities are urging residents in at-risk zones to evacuate where possible, as heavy rains are forecast to continue. And President Cyril Ramaphosa and U.S. President Donald Trump have met at the White House in Washington, D.C. in a bid to reset and revitalize bilateral relations between the countries. The visit focused specifically on reframing bilateral economic and also commercial relations, including the punitive import tariffs introduced by Trump, the Russia and the Ukraine war, and also the disinformation around genocide claims in South Africa. News Central's Bongani Sisiba has more.
President Donald Trump sat down to discuss the future of their nation's relationship. The atmosphere started on a light note with laughter and jokes about recent visit, particularly the visit of Ukraine's president to South Africa. They exchanged humorous remarks about trade and cooperation, emphasizing mutual interest in strengthening economic ties. Both leaders expressed optimism about expanding trade partnership and exploring new avenues for economic growth.
A whole range of issues, geopolitical, the work that you're doing to bring peace around the world, Ukraine and in the Middle East. So we value that, and we are also a great contributor to peace processes that are going on around the world.
But the tone shifted when a journalist posed the controversial question, allegations of genocide in South Africa. President Trump claimed white farmers are being killed and mistreated, citing reports and social media claims. South Africa's opposition leader Julius Malema's song, Kill the Boer, sparked the intense debate, referred by the U.S. administration as evidence of ongoing violence on accusations South Africa strongly denies.
These are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone, white South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all, I mean, I'll give these to you. So when you say, what would I like to do? I don't know what to do. Look at this. White South African couple say that they were attacked violently.
President Ramaphosa remained composed, firmly rebutting these allegations. He clarified that South Africa is committed to peace, stability, and economic development, dismissing claims of genocide as baseless.
We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them. And this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters.
Supporting the president's stance, Johan Rupert admitted there is no evidence of genocide in South Africa, emphasizing the country's dedication to safeguarding all its citizens.
But the crime is bad. The crime is terrible, sir, but Mr. Steenhuisen won't admit to it, but he runs the Western Cape, where I live. And the biggest murder rate is in the Cape Flats. Gangs. We've got gang warfare. Like your M33, whatever these guys. We've got equivalents there, but we need your help, sir.
Meanwhile, critics have described the meeting as a success, highlighting the positive outlook and the shared commitment to fostering stronger ties. South Africa's delegation underscored their desire to build a relationship rooted in trade, economic partnership rather than politics or conflict. President Cyril Ramaphosa also expressed optimism about future collaborations and that he is looking forward to passing G20 presidency to the United States later this year, signaling a new chapter in U.S.-South Africa relations. In Johannesburg for News Central, Bongani Siziba.
Now to further discuss this, I'm joined by international journalist Ken Karuri, who joins in from Nairobi in Kenya. Ken, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So, Ken, what are your overall thoughts of the meeting between President Ramaphosa and also Donald Trump? Did South Africa's delegates hold it well?
I think there already speculation and concern that President Ramaphosa was probably walking into a trap. We saw what happened in February when Ukrainian President Zelensky, when he was at the Oval Office and he was ambushed by President Trump together with his deputy J.D. Vance. And there are concerns that President Cyril Ramaphosa was probably walking into the same sort of scenario yesterday. The meeting started off well until the latter stages when we saw during the time for the questions with one of the journalists asking about the so-called persecution of the white farmers in South Africa. And that is where the meeting now became a bit tense. President Ramaphosa tried to that there is South Africa can be able to enhance its trade as well as investments with United States, and trying to move away from the issues to do with which had dominated the discussions earlier on whether South Africa was actually persecuting the white farmers. At the same time, President Trump was able now to seize on that, and he was able to pin President Ramaphosa on the same. And despite the fact that trying to hit the salvos at President Ramaphosa, I think Ramaphosa played it really well. He was cool, and the fact that he was able to bring on board the other white people who are in South Africa who are together with him, such as John Rupert, who is one of the richest businessmen in South Africa, as well as the two golfers, that's Retief Goosen, as well as Annie Owls, and also the DA leader, that's John Stehansen. He was able to sort of show a picture of the Rainbow Nation, and which I think was the smart way to do when he was able to talk to President Trump about the issues which were happening in South Africa, and which Trump had earlier said was one of the, he had condemned South Africa for what he said was the unfair treatment of the white farmers.
All right, Ken. Donald Trump insisted on the claims that the discussion centered on allegations of white genocide other than the issues of trade and also economic ties. Do you think that this was appropriate? Do you think there was a bit of perhaps maybe overcompensation when it comes to the topic of white genocide?
There's actually concern that President Trump has actually been misled in terms of the information that he has on the so-called persecution and genocide of the white farmers. He's been ramping up allegations saying that the white farmers in South Africa have actually been are being discriminated, and because the South Africa's government, which is predominantly black, wants to take away their land. We've seen there is the land expropriation bill law, which is already in place, and South Africa's government has actually been trying to resolve this particular issue of the land, which still remains emotive by bringing on board what he says a market value to enhance what you might say is a buyer willing seller sort of a transaction to ensure that the white farmers are able to sell the land to the government at what they feel is the market appropriate rate. But President Trump still feels that the farmers, the white farmers are actually being discriminated. And that's why he's actually been saying that he wants all the white farmers who cannot be able to get an opportunity to go to United States. Already last week, we saw about 60 white farmers, Afrikaners, who have already migrated to United States. He wants more of them to also continue moving there. But President Cyril Ramaphosa, together with his entourage, were adamant, and they still maintain that they are not in any way victimizing against the white farmers. And so the issues to do with the so-called the white farmers, it seems that President Trump has actually been misadvised on the same.
Misadvised then. So do you think that this was a win for South Africa, considering that this was really, or rather trade and investment was really rarely discussed at this meeting?
It's difficult at this stage to say whether President Ramaphosa was actually able to reach out to President Trump on this particular issue. One of the reasons he's there is to ensure that first, the issue of the G20, in which South Africa is the country which is on the presidency during this particular stage, he is able to galvanize all the leaders, including the United States, who have signaled they're not going to attend the summit for this particular year. President Ramaphosa still maintains that he would like to see the United States there, even as he hands over later on in the year. Hopefully, President Trump will have decided to go to South Africa in Pretoria to be able to join the other leaders for the G20. But also at the same time, for South Africa, which is seeking to increase its trade, already it has been slapped with 30% tariffs by United States. And it's one of the countries that is reeling heavily. There is a pause currently until July. And if that issue is not resolved, then South Africa is going to find it very hard. They'll have to pay the 30% tariffs. And that's expected to have an impact on the country.
All right, then. Well, Ken Karuri, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Our tragedy struck near the heart of Washington, D.C. late Wednesday as 2 Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, just a mile from the White House. The victims have been identified as Yarum Leshinsky, who is an Israeli national, and also Sarah Lynn Milgrim, an American citizen and U.S. employee of the Israeli embassy. According to Israeli sources, the two were a couple and may have been planning to marry. The shooting occurred during an event for young professionals and diplomatic staff. Washington police say the suspected gunman, 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, was taken into custody after surrendering to the police. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Thursday that security is being ramped up as Israeli diplomatic missions worldwide following the deadly shooting of 2 embassy staff members in Washington, D.C. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. What can you tell us about the couple who were killed?
That were killed in this shooting, Yaron Leshinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgrim. They worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and they were attending a charity event. And the sort of cruel irony of this is that this charity event was about raising funds for communities all over the world, and Palestine was included in that. So they were attending this event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. So Yaron had long-standing connections to Germany and was a founding member of the Youth Forum of the Israeli German Society. Its president described him as an open-minded, intelligent, and deeply committed person. And Milgrim, she was described as a devoted and active volunteer by Tech to Peace. That was a group offering tech and entrepreneurial training for young Palestinians and Israelis. So this young couple who were thought to be getting engaged next week, it's thought that he had bought an engagement ring for her, was going to present it to her in Jerusalem next week. So very sad indeed.
It is indeed sad. What do we know about the suspect then?
So this suspect, named as Elias Rodriguez, he shot at a group of 4 people just over a mile from the White House. This took place, close to FBI headquarters, police headquarters as well. As he was being taken into custody, there's footage out there where he's heard chanting "Free, free Palestine." And actually, it's thought that just after the shooting took place, people were sheltering inside the lobby of the museum, and he went inside with them, and people thought that he was a passerby, someone who was shaken up by the shooting. Someone actually gave him a glass of water, asked him if he was okay, and then he said, I did it for Gaza. I did this for Gaza. That's what he is quoted as saying. And then police apprehended him and he was taken into custody. And like I said, there is a video that is widely circulating where he can be heard chanting "Free, free Palestine."
Any reaction to the killing so far?
Yes, a quite strong reaction, especially from the Israeli government, who have said that they are blaming world leaders, organizations and the media for inciting anti-Semitism. That's according to Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. He's saying that this shooting in Washington is a direct result of anti-Semitic incitement, especially from foreign leaders and officials, especially from Europe. He's probably referring to the statement that France, the UK and Canada released earlier on this week, condemning Israel's latest offensive in Gaza. Israel's diaspora minister Amichai Chikil has also accused the leaders of UK, France and Canada of emboldening the forces of terror. President Trump has also reacted, saying that this is clearly an anti-Semitic attack and it must be stopped. But what they will want is how this incident is handled. They don't want this person, the perpetrator, to be made into some sort of hero figure, sort of what's happened with Luigi Mangione, the guy that killed the man from the healthcare provider from the health insurance, who's been kind of made into this hero figure in American culture. He doesn't want that to happen to this particular perpetrator of this terrible crime.
All right then, Afia, thank you very much for bringing us the details so far. Now let's go on a break. When we return, we've still got more. Now, top dignitaries from across Nigeria convened in Lagos at the 16th National Council on Trade and Investment event. The stakeholders explored strategies to boost the Nigerian economy through stronger collaboration between government and the private sector. Central to the discussions were innovation, technology, and positioning Nigeria as an attractive destination for foreign investment. New Central's business correspondent Habibat Adebayo was at the event and filed in this report.
The 16th National Council on Industry, Trade and Investment focuses on strategies to accelerate Nigeria's economic growth, with emphasis on collaboration between the government and private sector to enhance innovation, leverage technology, and position Nigeria as a prime destination for foreign investments.
Over 106 and 126 companies have shut down respectively in Sharada and Bompai clusters due to infrastructural deficit, inconsistent and inadequate power supply, and regulatory barriers. The cluster's development has been predominantly driven by private sector initiatives, underscoring the entrepreneurial spirit of the region. Challenges such as infrastructure deficit, limited access to finance, and regulatory complexities persist, potentially hindering optimal performance.
At the meeting, policymakers, business leaders, and economists underscored the urgent need for infrastructure investments, particularly in railway development, to unlock Nigeria's economic potential.
Investment in infrastructure was not just for the sake of infrastructure investment, but was targeted to manufacturing. So in which case, they laid out a plan over a 30-year period to construct expressways, a stretch of 85,000 kilometers, 85,000 kilometers of expressways.
As Nigeria seeks to strengthen its position in the global economy, the outcomes of this council meeting are expected to shape policies that prioritize innovation, industrialization, and foreign direct investments.
Sports now. Kwara United have booked their place in the final of the President Federation Cup after a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Rangers International, thanks to a decisive strike from Alalade. The victory set up a historic final against Abakaliki FC, who stunned Ikorodu City in the other semi-final, triumphing 5-4 on penalties after regulation time ended goalless. It will be Kwara United's first appearance in the Federation Cup final, and they will face a spirited Abakaliki FC side also reaching this stage for the first time in their history. And that's all this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories brought your way. We told you that Senate has received Rivers State budget proposal worth 1.48 trillion naira from President Tinubu. And 2023 budget, or rather Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi has denied holding secret meetings with Tinubu over alleged Fidelity Bank debt. Also, outside Nigeria, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered global security boost in aftermath of shooting in Washington. Now, do remember, you may send your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screens now. And do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Go TV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.